Hi everyone. In the framework of the book International Negotiation in a Complex World, we already talked about the board game, we talked about the players, and now we need to try and understand what is at stake. And here is where we get to chapter number 4 that talks about why is the topic or the issue important and what does that importance mean to the negotiation process. So if we can answer this question of how important is this issue that we're dealing with, being the Iran nuclear weapon capacity, reductions of global emissions, or free trade agreements, or the status of elephants in multilateral protection and conservation treaties. Each of those things are an issue, but we need to know how important this issue is to those who come to the negotiation table. And if we can answer this question, we can better understand who will get involved, who will be sitting at the negotiation table. Is it going to be the prime minister, or is it going to be some low-level bureaucrat who's been there for a very long time? And therefore, it can also help us predict how contested the process is going to be, and are we going into a highly conflictual and competitive negotiations, or something that will be much more calm and kind of smooth. Traditionally, we know, and this is from international politics, that we can divide the issues that we deal with, generally speaking, to high and low politics, right? So high politics are those issues or topics that involves high priority national interest. Think about the survival of your country or any other kind of threat to the prosperity and the well-being of the country and the people who live in it. If we can classify an issue, and this is where a lot of territorial disputes, a lot of things that involve cross-border killings, those things will fall into this category of high politics. We can expect participation by high or even the highest level officials. So if we are negotiating the Iran nuclear deal, for example, we see the US president sometimes personally involved, President Obama, and sometimes sending others, but they are still very high-level officials, secretaries, special envoys, these kinds of negotiators. And in a high politics situation, we will see high level of media and public attention as well. On the other end of the spectrum are low politics issues. These are issues that are not considered as high priority national interests. They can still be important. We can still think that it is important to talk about climate change, or other environmental politics, air pollution, water pollution, etc. But we don't see that as an immediate threat to our national security. Therefore, it becomes low politics. And because it is low politics, it attracts less attention from the media and the public, and usually it is dealt by low-level politicians or not politicians, officials, or lower-level officials. So if in high politics we see the involvement of head of state or deputies, in low politics we see lower level, maybe undersecretaries in the United States, or even department heads, or even lower than that, right? Now, there are some problems and issues with high-low politics. One of them is that it is assuming we can come up with a list of topics to put in each of those columns. So I can tell you right now what are high politics issues and what are low politics issues, and that will always be true. However, we know that the world is not necessarily working this way. And the book has been talking about this evolution of the concept of issue salience that comes to maybe not completely replace, but work alongside with this idea of high and low politics. And when we think about issue salience, we need to ask ourselves how important the issue is for the actors who are involved. Take, for example, health issues, disease control, right? In any other normal year, nobody in the United States would say that health issues are high politics for the United States. However, there could be high politics for a country like Mali that see a lot of infectious disease in its territory and its population. And so we cannot just come up and say, oh, it's a health issue, therefore it's low politics. We need to see how important it is for the actors that are actually involved. So we move away from this predetermined high-low politics to something else. We need to look about what does each player involved in the negotiation, what do they care about? What do they value? How resolved are they when it comes to this issue? In other words, what are they willing to do in order to solve the problem? Are they willing to put any resource into it? Or is it something that they might hold off on some things, maybe not really follow it through all the way? Those are questions that we need to ask ourselves. We also have to understand that an issue salience is not static, but either it's shifting. If we go back to the example of health politics and disease control, again, who would have thought that our top-level officials would deal with a disease outbreak on a daily basis for more than a year now? So in 2018, disease control would still be important for the United States, but not a high politics issue. It is much more so right now. Also, issue salience understands or recognizes that the importance of an issue could be asymmetric, meaning that what my country cares about is not necessarily what the country on the other side cares about. And if you think to the case of the ivory trade, right, you could see that different actors had different importance connected to the protection of elephants. Even a country like Japan, we're talking about cultural and maybe identity norms that could push an issue to become very high. But in the United States, we're talking about conservation groups and kind of general values and principles of protecting the environment and nature, which could be seen as much lower level politics. And so there is asymmetry. So given all that, given that it is a dynamic concept that is shifting, that is asymmetric, that can be different from year to year, from place to place, how do we measure saliency? Right? The first thing that we need to look is the domestic competition. Remember level 2, the 2-level negotiations? The more there are winners and losers, or the more the winners and losers, the discrepancy between them is larger, the more likely we get the more likely we are to get a domestic competition on the outcome of the negotiation, which would then elevate the issue saliency. More people will care about it, we might see media attention, and that would attract the commitment of higher level officials, which is the second component here. So when you are entering an analysis of a case, and again, you can think back to the ivory trade or look forward to our next case, the Beagle Channel negotiations, you can ask yourself, who is involved in the negotiations? Did the country designate a presidential special envoy or a secretary level representative, a high level official, or who the people who are involved are really low level bureaucrats in this case? And how important is this case for highest figures being in government? So how important is this case for the prime minister of the country or the opposition leader versus, and also how important it is to some other key figures like celebrities, for example. The more commitment we see by key actors, the more likely issue saliency will go up. Now, another question is, are we dealing with a crisis situation where there is an immediate threat to important national interest with a time frame that pressures the decision making? Almost always, if you can identify a crisis situation, you are talking about an issue that will have higher saliency. And then finally, we need to look about the media attention, because the media, and your book has, in page 110, gives an example of how sometimes the media becomes the uninvited negotiators. The more attention the media pays means the more attention people will pay, and the more important the considerations in level 2 will become, therefore minimizing the possible win sets in the situation and making the negotiations arguably harder. So more media attentions means, again, higher issue saliency. So I hope you found this little review useful. And the next time that we do a case analysis or the case review, try to play with this concept of issue saliency and see if you can determine how salient an issue is to the actors involved. Again, remembering that it can change over time and it really doesn't have to be symmetrical.